Ну, ми вже не дивуємося. Дуже приємно бачити величезну кількість красивих і таки спотворених інтелектом облич на днях модернізму у Ратуші. Оголосити і представити наших сьогоднішніх лекторів, а це Кейс Ван Райвен з Амстердаму та Надєжда Ніліна з Московської архітектурної школи МАРШ, але вона також з Нідерландів, тому що довгий час працює і працювала з містобудівними проєктами в Роттердамі. Тож оголосити цих двох має честь заступниця директора Центру міської історії Ірина Маценко. Немає такої честі, тому її оголошу я, Ірина Кримпується сьогодні. Ви знаєте, особисто мої враження від цих двох лекторів, хоча у нас дуже хороший набір на літню школу «Новий Львів», де вчаться молоді архітектори, але емоційно вони мені чомусь найближчі. Тому що вчора і позавчора у нас були дуже теоретичні лекції. Ми вивчали містобудування, паркове, модерністське і так далі. Ми дізнавалися про інші важливі речі, про те, як у Львові з'явився район Новий Львів, функціоналізм і модернізм загалом. А сьогодні ми будемо говорити про практичні кейси. Власне, про свій практичний кейс розкаже урбаніст з Нідерландів Кейс Ван Райвен. До слова, він працює не лише в Нідерландах, довгий час він працював у Львові. Він є співавтором книги «Львів. Місто парадоксів». Причому, зверніть увагу, ця книга цікава вже тим, що зазвичай на книгах про Львів ми бачимо таке романтичне, вечірнє, красиве місто, а тут ми бачимо правду. Ми бачимо ринок за драматичним театром. Ну, а детальніше про це, мабуть, Кейс розкаже сам. І Надєжда Ніліна з Московської архітектурної школи МАРШ. Крім того, що вона працювала в Роттердамі, вона ще працює і працювала з проектами всесвітньої спадщини ЮНЕСКО. На цьому я замовкаю. Кейс, вам слово.
Sorry, I didn't know I have a translation also. I didn't understand anything. That's my problem. That's why I do this lecture in English. Oh yeah, sorry. Is it working?
Yes.
Yes. So this lecture is in English, and I suppose everyone speaks English here. Okay, thank you to be present here in this audience. And my lecture will be more, I think, practical than the lectures before. It is more about making the city, not about what cities are, but about what nowadays is making cities, at least in Amsterdam, I can talk about. So this is perhaps a bit a wild label, WOW Amsterdam, what's that? But I will be sure that it will be clear for you in the end of the lecture. And it is about acupuncture. And I suppose you know what is acupuncture. Acupuncture is very precise incisions in your body, what gives new energy or clear energy in your body. And that is precisely what I mean. When you see the city as a body, or the neighborhood as part of the body, then those precise incisions in the city can give new life around, for the people, of course. So this is about this lecture. First, I want to introduce a bit myself in my context of Amsterdam. I'm real Amsterdam. I'm born there. I lived my whole life there, yet I live there and I work there almost half my life for the municipality of Amsterdam. And this is what you see, this is the center of Amsterdam. Oh, this is wrong. This is wrong also. How can I... This one, yeah, sorry. This is the center of Amsterdam. It is a bit bigger than the old center of Lviv, but it has also UNESCO status, especially the canal zone. All the canals, yes, I have to do it. These are the canals. They were made in the 16th century, 17th century, and that is like here the center, that's UNESCO monument. Here there is the ring, the inner ring, and the rest is like what you know as the Habsburg circle around the city center, the old city center. But there is something more, what you don't have in Amsterdam, in Lviv, that's the water. Of course there are the canals with the water, and this is the Eye, and there is the river, the Amstel, that's why it is called Amsterdam. And 12 years of my work was working along this revitalization of the Amsterdam waterfront. And that was really great work to do. And as you visit Amsterdam, you will see it. It is about modern Amsterdam. But it is old Amsterdam also, because it was a harbour site. And what is the nice thing about it, we integrated all in the new developments, warehouses. So history is present in nowadays Amsterdam on the waterfront. And that is what it is about when you are developing cities, I believe. But I have also a relation to Lviv. You can say I have another relation, also in my life, more perhaps. And perhaps Lviv is a kind of mistress. It is a kind of city I like to go to, and I always need pretexts to go to Lviv again. So now the new urban school of Nova Lviv is a new pretext to come to Lviv. You need pretexts if you have mistresses in your life, I think. So Lviv is my mistress, and I wrote with some friends this book about Lviv, and I think there is a kind of relation between Amsterdam and Lviv. There is history, there is the size of the city. You can say you have about 750,000 inhabitants, and Amsterdam has about 820,000. It is not a big city. It is a relative small, big city. But there are differences also. Next to the water, there are differences, and you will see. And also, one of my relations with Lviv is that I was initiator of the project here, the We Lviv project, and that was on this city tower. That was a project of 60 portraits of people of Lviv who had their own story of Lviv, and with an app you could integrate with their story of Lviv, where they lived and what is their relation with this city. And that's also something what is exactly what I like. City is a meeting place for people where they live. It is not about facades, it's the people who live in their houses, and you have to connect them with their city. So this was a project in that case. And this is my profession, and this is more becoming my profession, making places, place making in the city for meeting people. And this is the WOW thing. So Amsterdam, WOW. And it is easy, this is an old building, this is from the 60s, this building, a modernist building. And WOW is nothing else than a hostel and a temporary home for young art professionals and urban explorers and much more, and you will see what is much more, with windows on the world. So it is an open place to the world, this site, what we created. And now back to Amsterdam. And when in these days, nowadays, when you're talking about urban planning, it is about talking on different scales. It is talking about competing regions. It is not about competing countries. It is more about competing regions in the world, I think. So Amsterdam had. This is the region of Amsterdam. So this was the city center, and this is its region. And this region of Amsterdam is, well, of economic and cultural value, not only for this region, but also for the Netherlands as a whole. It is the capital of the Netherlands. However, the government is in The Hague, but that's typical Dutch. And it is also a logistic hub. And when I say logistic, I mean there is the harbor. And the harbor is the 4th harbor in Europe, and that's important. And that's why this city is always open to the world, because it is a harbor city. But we have also the airport, and the airport is also the 4th airport of Europe. It is a very international airport. So all the people who come here, and it's incredible, a lot of people who arrive in this airport, they need all kinds of logistics things around. So they work around 80,000 people in the air that are dependent also from the airport. And there is also the flowers around here. There is Aalsmeer, and that is our the world famous flower market, where we all distribute our flowers to the places in the world. Perhaps it is silly that our flowers come sometimes from Kenya to Holland, and there we distribute our flowers. In ecological terms it is, in sustainable terms it is crazy, and now we are changing it, but still it is a logistic hub for distributing flowers. And now we have a problem with Russia, because they don't accept our flowers at this moment. But that's another story. But we have also another hub. Here, there is a science center, and I think you don't know, but this is one of the fastest internet hubs in the world. So a lot of data from all over the world, also your data, what you are producing every day, is coming in this center and is redistributed all over the world. It is of scientific value, enormous scientific value. So that logistic hub is very important for our economic in the city. And it is also a creative and a cultural city. There are a lot of a big creative industry with designers, architects, and whatever more, and artists. It is a final center, and of course, like Lviv, it is also a tourist center. In the region, we have, so in the whole of the region, we have around 2.5 million citizens, with the half of it is jobs. That's important to know something about. And then 2008 was an important year. It was the financial and also economic crisis. And a lot of things changed. It changed also our planning system. I will tell you why. And it also changed my personal situation, because just before 2008 I quit with working in the municipality, and I thought, oh well, I can go on working on my own. And then began the crisis, but okay, then you have to do it in another way. So there are some observations about the economic crisis, and it's not only here, there is also in the West a big distrust in the about the political system, about the absence of connecting visions, and perhaps about politicians who can, with their vision, connect the people. I think that is a global problem, but especially this is also a problem in our society. Also, we have by nature in Holland a decentralized system. We have not a centralized system, because we are an urbanized country, so we have such a lot of cities and an urban environment. And that's why all they compete for having power. And that's why it is very centralized. But decentralization in Holland is going on and on and on. And there is also much more a change to a participation society with government as a facilitator. We call it the facilitator. We had a strong local government who owned the ground, who owned the land, who has a strong planning system, so they could direct the planning of the city in a very good way. But now their budget is lower and lower and lower, so there is a kind of other way of planning with much more power. They try to give power to the people, but okay, that's how that goes, that's another thing. And I'm also talking about much more a kind of self-made future generation. It is not the state who is responsible for our future. It is much more the people themselves in communities, in groups, who take initiatives that make their own future. And that is a very strong movement also in Amsterdam. And I saw it also in Lviv. In urban terms, our policy is much more than in the past to extend our city, much more based on densification or condensation, the existing fabric. And you will see it in the picture I will show next. And also it is much more about sustainable planning and architecture, but also including the social dimension. For sometimes you forget that sustainable planning is based on what the community wants. And what the community wants, then it is also can be sustainable. Bottom-up initiatives by cooperation and collective ownership. In 2008, there was a production of about 5,000 houses per year in Amsterdam. And it collapsed to around 1,000 houses because of the financial crisis. And only because a lot of people took initiative to be the designer, the assignment and the owner, because the developers, they were away, they took the initiative to produce new houses. And now 25–30% of our new houses is built by what we call collective ownership. And that was not before 2008. And that's a big difference what is going on in our society now. And also the value or the meaning of the neighborhood is much more important nowadays than it was before. That is also an observation that is very important. And of course the strategic projects, and I will tell about that. This is an image of Amsterdam of 2014. And that is the result, it is just a bird view. This is the result of a participation project about the vision of Amsterdam 2030. And as you see, Amsterdam, it is all about marketing these days. Whether you want it or not, it is all about marketing. And that's the slogan of Amsterdam is Amsterdam. Okay, that's it. But it works. I can say it works in a way. And Amsterdam, in the vision of Amsterdam, the structural vision, these are the key issues. Water and a green city, that's the most important thing our policy is based on. Densification of the city, quality of public space, public transport, and sustainable energy. And you can see it in this map. When I talk about sustainable energy, you will see in the harbour side there are lots of windmills going and other different ways of getting energy than we are used to get energy with our fabrics and so on. And when I talk about densification, then you can see also an interesting thing. All we are densifying around the waterfront, the city. That's very important. There is space because industries left there, and there is space to rebuild new or old areas. This is also, we are using the existing structure of the city to change areas where only was one-dimensional entrepreneurs and so on. So we are mixing these zones with, you can live here also in the future. So it is a mixed area and it is an existing area. And what is also good to see that this area, this is around what we call the circle ring, the ring for transport and for cars. That is also where you see a lot of densification and a lot of dynamics around that ring. But that was a ring what was not attractive at all. It is like the circle around this city where all the industries left, when the Soviet left, all the industrial zones were. That's exactly that zones. That is a zone you don't want to live in. Yes, okay, sorry. And what is so important for Amsterdam is that we call it the finger structure of the green. You can Amsterdam it is built like a hand, and this is the built areas, and between the fingers, that's the green area. So the green area is very much into the center of the city, and where I live, I only need 5 minutes to get in the green of the surroundings of the city. And that is about quality of life. That is really about what foreigners come to Amsterdam and they want it. And I think that potentials, that qualities you have also in Lviv. So mind it, and if you look at this kind of maps. And Amsterdam, I call it a metropolitan village. It is composed by villages. And villages, I say not real villages, but by 470 neighborhoods. But we also have in our city 178 nationalities. You cannot imagine when you are here. But we have about 25% of the inhabitants of the households of Amsterdam is of another origin. It can be Suriname people, it can be Moroccan people, it can be Turkic people, it can be African people, it can be from everywhere. So there is a lot of diversity in our society, urban society in Amsterdam. And that's also, sometimes it causes problems, but in the most it is a kind of rich cultural meeting place in that way. And that is Amsterdam. In that way it is a very liberal city and sometimes also anarchic. Anarchic will say everyone feels free. And when you go to Amsterdam, you will see it. Everybody has a bicycle, more bicycles than inhabitants there are in Amsterdam. And everyone who is bicycling in Amsterdam does it in their own way. I don't like it, but they do it in their own way and they think it is the best. So this is something of the mindset of Amsterdam. Everyone don't, the state is one thing, but how I do it, it is an individualistic city in that way. Okay. And now coming to another point. This was also a very interesting moment. Perhaps you heard of the Biennales in Venice. And there was a landscape architect, Ronald Rietveld, who was the curator of one of the expositions in the Biennale. And he made this maquette. You cannot imagine, this is an incredible, great, big maquette. And all the empty buildings of Holland are in this maquette. So all the buildings who are empty at that time, he pushed in one maquette, and his statement was to wake-up call to the Dutch government to use the enormous potential and inspiring unoccupied buildings and site in a creative way. And that's exactly what it is about, what we are doing now with our densification of the city. We use the sites and the buildings that were unoccupied, that had owners who had more profit by letting it vacant or unoccupied than using it. But that's a capital you have to use. So only in the Amsterdam metro region, what I said, only in offices, empty offices, there was almost 3 million square meters empty. And then I don't talk about military sites, about churches. For here the churches are built in Amsterdam, they are not built, they have to fill up with other activities. And I'm talking about elderly homes, for we have another policy with elderly homes. We say now the people have to live in their homes as long as possible. So we have a huge space of empty buildings, and we have to do something with that. And that's what I want to talk with just one example. This is was an unoccupied polytechnical school situated in the Bossenlommer neighborhood along the ring road. And this is a huge complex. It is about 15,000 square meter. It was empty. It was a bit squatted. And it functioned for 5 years as a center for refugees. People who had now came from let's say, Africa or Syria or whatever country, and they had a temporary home in this building. And after 5 years, it was empty again. And that was a big problem for the neighborhood because it became a kind of non-pleasant place, not safe place, and a lot of people, criminality and so on, was in this neighborhood also present. Now I make a switch to the history of this site where we done. This is the General Amsterdam Master Plan of 1935, and I'm talking about the situation of this building here. This is all the Master Plan of 35 is executed in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. Because of the war, we couldn't implement this plan. And this is a very famous plan, well planned, also with a new lake, so water, and with the sand of this lake, we could make all these extensions. That was the bottom of the new built areas. That was a very smart idea about it. And there was also a lake in this site also. So producing new lakes or water is in our genes in that way, not only taking away the water. This plan was built as garden cities. In the lecture of Jaroslav, it wasn't mentioned, but this is one of the real famous plans also of that period, the post-war reconstruction period. And it was in a complete different layout of composition than it was the Plan Berlage, what he showed also. That was a complete different way of planning this. So it was with blocks, and it was with a lot of greenery, collective green, and not closed blocks, what was pre-war urban planning. And even in that time, Amsterdam people were so proud of this city that they make postcards to send to the relatives somewhere else. So, mind you, this was really valuable for the people who lived there. And this was the beginning of that kind of plan. But this was before the war, and this was made before the war, and you can see that it has a layout what was also in the Plan Berlage. But it was worked out in a different way. And in 35, they didn't know that there was so much transport, cars coming, like in the 50s and the 60s. So they made, through this plan, a new highway. And that was not foreseen in this plan. And that was, well, you can see until today that that's caused a lot of problems. This is that ring road. It was built in 68, so it was not planned original, and you see the houses, they are standing along the ring road. So this is the situation after the war in the 1970s. And so that's not such a pleasant condition to live in. This was the Polytechnical School where thousands of students made their civil engineering, building engineering education. I did my education also in this school. That's fun. So then around there is the Bosselommer district. To position the district, it was a post-war extension area of the Amsterdam master plan, according to the garden city principles. Open blocks with collective green facilities. It was a residential area with domination of social housing. The ownership of the houses were mostly in hands of what we call housing corporations. We have a lot of housing cooperation in our system, in our society. And the land was owned, was in the hands of the city, but it was leased. So you can imagine, for planning, this is an ideal situation. You have the land, you have the housing corporations, and you have the plan. So it is planned, well, as in an ideal situation, you could say. And it was all in almost all in four storage buildings. But you have a framework, but there is also a kind of change in the city. And the change, we didn't foresee, of course, that there is, since the 19th, there was a tendency of coming in the Moroccan people, the Turkish people, and the Suriname people, and they had low incomes. So the social housing was ideal situation for them to this was an ideal situation, but because it was such a concentration, there was a kind of segregation of that people in that neighborhood, and that caused also between themselves, but with the existing population, a lot of problems. There was also a lot of noise production of the ring road, high unemployment rate, low education of income, violence, criminality, and geographical and social exclusion. They closed themselves in their own groups. And there was a kind of, you can say, stigmatization of those areas. This Barcelona site was #1 in the rate of 40 neighborhoods in the whole of Holland, what was the worst. And when you are pushed, or when you are appointed as the worst, you behave also as not a good one. That's something very stupid to do, I think. When you say you're the worst person, then you think, well, when I'm not good, well, what is it to be better? So this is one of the problems with statistics, with government policy also. So it was stigmatization of that neighborhood. And then in 2000, yes, there started a huge urban renewal, not only of that neighborhood, but of the whole plan of Van Eesteren. And it was, you can say, a kind of massive reconstruction. Almost 50 to 60% of all those houses you saw before in the picture of the garden cities had to be demolished and to rebuild and to be densified. That was the policy, and part of the policy also was implemented till the crisis of 2008. Then there was no money any longer to invest. The housing corporation had no money, so suddenly all the operation, the huge operation, blocked, stopped, and nothing happened. There was no production any longer, and the people complained, you promised me a new house, you promised me a new garden, but where is my garden? So there was a lot of struggle in that area. But on the other hand, it was also a chance for people to change that policy, because they became aware that the values in that neighborhood who had to be destroyed also had a positive value. So there came a movement of people who said, don't destroy all these houses, perhaps we can renovate it, perhaps it is useful for students, perhaps it is useful for starters, for young people who need, in Amsterdam there is a lack of houses, they can also live there, and then you have another natural way of mixing population groups in that new area. So they started to rethink the policy because of protests of the people themselves. So from that time there was an idea of variety of small interventions, so not massive interventions, small interventions, introducing much more diversity in the area, also built private houses or rented houses who can converted into private houses, and participation and social cohesion. That was part of a new movement started from 2008. And so you can see this is about the quality, and perhaps you say, well, this is a good quality. And I think this is not a bad quality, but it is small, like in the Khrushchev houses. It is small houses. It is 40 to 60 square meters. It is not big, and so you need more space. But starting people and students, they don't need more space. So there is also a movement that this kind of buildings that is temporarily used now by students, and they can pay a low rent, but on the other hand, they have to spend 10 to 15 hours per week in the community to give education to the children and to do that kind of thing. So that is quite a different way of how you go than demolishing and thinking in the traditional way of renewing this kind of neighborhoods. And this is just a pop-up store where people can do their things 1 week there, 1 week there. So it is quite a different way of thinking of how you can get new energy in this area. But also, this building is exactly the same typology as this. And here, you hardly believe, but on the outside of this, they isolated the houses with polystyrene, and with small strips of stones they built, and they renewed the windows. So you get the idea that it is a complete different and house than it was. And this is a sustainable house, and this was not. So the energy of this house costs a lot less than it was in the original state. But on the other hand, there is also attention to build in the same structure, urban structure, new buildings. This is an old building, this is a new building. So this is much more a variety of interventions in the housing stock. And this is in the other offices. This was a church, it was a Catholic church, it was empty for 5 years. This is now recently, it was an office, it was 7 years empty. This is also, this is real modernism, this is now a monument, an official monument, this building. And this, a post-war monument, by the way, so it is from the post-war period. And this is now rebuilt into small studios for working people, starters, and also partly for students. And there are a lot of common spaces on the ground floor. But also there is attention to the public space. You have the ring road, and under the ring road, it is horrible to pass it. So artists are asked to bring works in that kind. So this is a little oasis under the ring road. It is just to get imagination how it can be in a different way. So that's also an intervention. This is the position of WOW, what I told you, the hostel and the artist building in Amsterdam West. So this is the center, and this is the ring road. On the scale of the neighborhood, this was the building. Of course, this was in the 60s and the 70s. This photo, and this is what it is now. So, what it is now, it is. Well, I will tell you more about what it is now, and also why it is so powerful. And it was opened in 2014 by a party of the neighborhood. And you will see also that there is a lot of diversity in the neighborhood and present. initiative of this and the vision of this WOW project. It was a cooperation between the district of West. We have in the city a bureau of breeding places. They locate places where it is possible that artists can live in, to stimulate the climate in Amsterdam for artists or creative people, because we want to be a creative city. When you want to be a creative city, you have a place, you need a place to live in, and you need a place to work. And because all developers want also that, we want to have the price of we want to have it low, that it is accessible for that kind of groups. So that's the second goal, to strengthen the cultural, creative and tourist climate of Amsterdam by offering temporary housing. It is 2 years housing to the artists, and then they have to move on themselves. We give them a chance to young art professionals and hostel facilities to urban visitors. Why we mix it? Because only then it is in economical way feasible. With the hostel you can earn money, and with the artist studios, well, that is not profitable. So with the profitable thing you can earn the non-profitable thing. And it is also good that it is mixed, and not only a hostel, or not only for students or for artists. And one of the goals is to contribute to this agenda for regeneration in that neighborhood. That is also part of what we want to do. This was the concept. Windows on the world, and how we can make that by the concept of the building and the program. This is more about the program, and this was also the program. So we were really thinking about what is the program of this building. And this is, well, the building itself in how you can see it. So this is the exit. Yeah. This is the existing building. In this part, there are the studios. Those floors are the studios for the artists in residence. The upper is the hostel. So this part is the hostel part. In the backyard, this part, there is an urban garden where we grow vegetables for the restaurant. The restaurant is in this part of the there is a patio inside, that is a more silent patio, and here there are workplaces for working for the artists, and also here there is a big theater. This was the sport facilities of the school. There is a theater for children, and there is on the ground floor a research center for graphical design. So this is complete mixed use of a vacant building, and it contributes in a way to the. This was our references. So what do we want to be? So you need sometimes references. What can inspire the whole thing? That was really what we needed. And this was the work of the architect. It were young architects we hired, and they, in a simple, really simple way, they renovated this building. This was the building, and it is only a thing of moving out all the things what was built before. Make room in this building. That was the main important thing what they did. And we also isolated the whole facade with double glass for the energy, for the sustainability. That was necessary. That were the main, and in the installations of the building, that was the main investment we had to do. So there is also thinking about visibility, and this was the model. So the WOW Foundation, it is a foundation, rents the building of the city, from the city for 15 years period, and the first years they are staggered. That will say, the first year we pay 1/5 of the rent, the second year we pay 2/5 of the rent, the third year we pay 3/3 of 3/5 of the rent, and after 5 years we pay the full market price. So there is a period where you can adapt to the situation, for it is also a risk for everyone. And it was a co-financing of the whole investment of the transformation by the WOW Foundation itself. It cost us 2 million euro, and that's not much for such a size. It was a subsidy from the city and the district, because the maintenance was so bad of the building, they had to invest in the maintenance, the old maintenance of the building. So these were the investments. We are, as a foundation, responsible for the cost-benefit operations. We manage the whole thing, and we are responsible. But there is also, we attracted a cultural program, art curator. So there is created a lot of activity in this building, and that is what it is about. This was the entrance at the same place. We made this the entrance. This is for the hostel guests. This was the patio, how it was when and how it is now, simple. This is the upper floor, and when we came in the building, the floors were yellow, red, blue and green, and don't ask me why, but we used it in an exaggerate way, so we made it a yellow floor, the upper floor. Well, that's great thinking. But also, in the hostel, there is also this beds. This is also the interior. So we only had to make this kind of facilities in the rooms. And this is, well, where one of the studios from an artist who lived there. So they're all different. There are 50 of those studios and they are different. And this is the cultural programming. So there are a lot of activities in the building. This is one of the galleries, and the gallery is also used by the artists for performances. This is the same place as that, but because of the light shows and you cannot recognize it so easy. But it is exactly the same place. And this is where we had a concert, famous concert, also from Philip Glass in the restaurant. This is another gallery, the whole stair house where you go up. This is a pop-up installation from artists. You can see the urban garden in the inside. You can see in the front of the office, and we also started tours with scooters through the neighborhood. So you get on a scooter, and then you get a story about the neighborhood from the people who live in the neighborhood, from the Moroccan people, the young people who sometimes you think you are going on a scooter and I cannot walk there, but when you sit on the scooter, then it is safe. That's good. And this is also where the neighborhood we invite the neighborhood also for all kinds of activities. So it is with fashion, it is with showing people, children, how they can. This is a 3D dimension printer for children, and it is very nice to see how it can work. So it is also good to see how it can work. And we also in the building made a little place about the history of the building, and that is part of a post-war architectural route through the Western cities, so the Garden City, and that is organized by. He was the designer of the whole plan of Amsterdam West. So there is a museum, a little museum, it is called the Van Eester Museum, about post-war modernism in Amsterdam. And of course this doesn't attract much tourists, but it is an example how the people of the neighborhood, Amsterdam citizens and tourists can discover the value of this kind of architecture. What not is always so valued by the people themselves. So this is a way of what we also organize. And this was also an initiative because of the crisis in 2008. There were a lot of architects who were unemployed, or students who couldn't get into the architect bureaus where they could learn half a year or something. So we asked three of the architects, we offered three architects places during the period of building, and we said, well, you make for us a meeting object, whatever you want, but you are responsible from the design till the implementation, and you have to see how you get your money financed for making this object. So it was a kind of platform, what were all meeting place in the public space in front of the, and it can get all kinds of forms, so you can model it. It can sometimes be a podium, and sometimes it can just be like this. And they found themselves the financing for making this podium. So that is also a kind of inspiring, well, they had no work, but we gave them the possibility to do so. And after 1 year now of existing, we exist just 1 year, we have 50 professional artists in residence in the building. We have 7 professional artists in the workshops. We have around a year 60,000 guests. And nobody comes from foreign, these are international guests. 95% of our guests are from the world. And they will never come in this neighborhood, for sure. They all go to the center of the city. And we have 10,000 visitors of all kinds of cultural events. We offer new 25 jobs in the neighborhood. There is a collaboration with 10 local or other local organizations, and we also contribute to people who are in crisis with their life, and we offer them places to live. And this is one of the last, and this makes it, this little initiative, you have to, again, to place it in the context of what is going on there. So this is the ring road, this is the West Ring Road, and this is just, so I was sketching in my office, and this is the ring road, and there are a lot of dynamics and a lot of activities, and there are the most buildings are empty. So what we did is, this is a green, we try to connect the city center, and the city center, I don't talk now only about the historical center, but the center within the ring, like your Habsburg center, you can say. We try to connect that area with the extensions of the city. And that is blocked by the ring. It is not only by the ring road, there is also a metro on that, so that is really a barrier. And this is a kind of green zone, and this is a train station, and we converted this square, what was completely an unlivable square without any green, in a complete, but also in a complete green park. So when you now come out of the train, you come in a green park site. That's one of the things, and it doesn't cost much. That's a good thing about it. This is our initiative, and this is on this line. So there are more buildings here and here and here and here empty. We did this, and I try to interest the owners of this building to do not exactly the same program, but do also a kind of program of make it active. Then you can connect this area with that area. Here it is also with this building that is situated on this connection, and these are other buildings. They are empty. This is a ING office, and that will offer 450 new houses in it when it is renovated. This was an office, and it is now a student hotel. So there live students during 9 months, and during 3 months they have to move away, and then it is a hotel. That's a kind of, well, that's a concept for this building, and it works. And this is also a student housing with creativity places. That is, this is the ACTA building. So there are a lot of initiatives in this zone who can connect, in a way, the center with the neighborhoods around the center. Some conclusions. using vacant buildings, space or open space or industrial site in a smart and intelligent way can give an impulse and new energy to urban neighborhood regeneration. But start looking for cooperation possibilities between committed owners, local government and creative social entrepreneurs. And I think it is all about a right and visible program, so focus also on the program and a transparent process. A transparent process is really, really, really important. And, well, I think it is all about inspiration. I think that's also now what to do about Polaron. But that's not, but this is when I'm working on the new Lviv site, I'm always in my mind with that kind of initiatives, and I think, why wouldn't it be possible to convert this building in such something as what we are talking about? And why new offices, oh, why the site Nowy Lviv is not asking for new offices, Nowy Lviv is asking, I think, for new energy. And that's what it is about.
And the overall plan, how do the different levels of planning work in Amsterdam?
Well, the connection, of course, is an answer to densification of the city. Oh yeah, sorry. It is an answer to densification of the city, and this is just one example. But when you have hundreds of those examples, you really are making the city much more diverse than you do it only with one. So I can give you hundreds of this kind of examples, but I wanted to give just one. And there is also, I think, when you have talking about a sustainable city, it is much more in favor to use the existing buildings than to demolish the buildings, but because it is a, well, demolishing of all the material and what you do with it. So it is also in a sustainable way, it is very good. So it is also in the sustainable city, it has a relation. We also want to be a tourist city. Amsterdam wants to be a tourist city. But what you see is that all the tourism is in the center, all they want in the center. Now there are initiatives to build hotels outside the center to attract also make it also possible that tourists come in different parts of the city and not only focus on the city center, where really I don't go any longer in Amsterdam, because it is, well, it is sometimes, especially in summertime, it is not my city any longer. I avoid the city center and I go to other places. So in all ways, this scale, this super small scale invention relates also to the goals the city formulated on the scale of the master plan of 2030, in my opinion.
And are there specific tools that empower this kind of initiatives? Are there there are tools. I think it was a very good initiative from the city to have the institute of what I call the Bureau of Breeding Places. And the Bureau of Breeding Places has a budget of its own. And it is filled with money, of course, of the city, but it was also a kind of guilt that the local government felt when lots of historical buildings were given to developers, and the original artists and the squatters had to be moved out. Then the local government was aware that by the process of gentrification, whipping out all the artists, we lose our capital of creative industry. So they thought, well, let's do something else. We have a fund, and let's invest the fund in small subsidies for projects, not to pay all the projects, but small subsidy as an incentive to that project, to start a project. And also, it was not for us able, without the €500,000, to start this project. So with small subsidies, the Breeding Place City Fund could make this visible. So that's an instrument.
And are there tax incentives as well?
No, taxes in this case, no, there is no taxes. No, it is just, they make it free in the budget of the city, this fund. But it is a fund for 15 years. So it is not for 1 year, it is a long-term thing. This you have to think in more long-term periods, I think.
Okay, I have an easy question and a hard question.
Okay.
So the easy question is, can you describe your team and who are the people that go around and convince others that this is a worthy project to participate in?
Well, that was something of, well, you can say there were 3 needs. The city had to maintain that building and lost yearly a lot of money. So they have a problem. They have a problem. On the other hand, the city wants new places. And there are always initiators in the city. And when it is possible to have a kind of cooperation to find each other, well, then it will be possible. So the city had also something in mind, what we are doing now. And they had a problem. And now, well, all those problems, in a way, are solved. Not the whole is solved, because we are now earning the value for the municipality. Because we are going to pay the market price in 5 years, and that is a high price. So we are also investing in this building, that the revenues after 5 years go to the city themselves. So that we have to also adapt to that idea. But it is like that.
Who initiated the dialogue?
The dialogue was initiated by the guy of the Bureau of Breeding Places, because he has the panorama of the city. And that's a civil servant. He has the panorama. And when you have the panorama, like Julian has also a panorama, but more from the architects and the builders, but he has a panorama of where are the creative initiatives, where live the artists, where live the students, and so on. So he is possible, when there is an initiative, to pick it up and to give it a kick. So that's the same. He was in contact with the hotelier, so a professional in the hotelier sector. I'm from processes. I know how to connect people with initiatives and with doing and making projects. So this is a kind of process how you connect the right people, and then becomes the initiative, and the concept is very important. Though they have to agree on concept level, and the rest you have to do it yourself.
And the business plan is developed by?
The business plan, we did it, but we did it, of course, in a team, and we had to let it be approved by the others, by the breeding places and the district, because they also invest in it.
So when we read about entrepreneurship, when cities decide that they want to develop kind of a culture of entrepreneurship, the most important thing is creating the security for failure.
Yeah.
So creating a possibility for ventures to go south. So if something doesn't work, people personally don't hurt too much. And this is how a lot of kind of high-tech companies start as spin-offs from universities and other places. What happens in this equation if there is a failure? For example, if the programming doesn't work, or if your rental payments, which are graduated over 5 years, right? So they gradually increase. What happens if after 2 years you can't pay that? is there a buffer?
Yeah, well, let's say we are very strict in saying to the artist, you have a two years contract, and then you have to move along, because there is another group who graduates, and we want to get the other people, because otherwise it becomes a low rent place to live 10 years, and that's not what we want. We want it as a kind of starting point, and to give them a place where they can start. And after 2 years, we decided 2 years is okay. And in cooperation with their discussion, because we started 1 year, and then they said, no, 1 year is too short, and I agree that's too short. So 2 years is enough. The hostel, it was a risk for us to locate a hostel in this neighborhood around. But that was the market vision of the hotelier, the lady who runs hotels in. And so you have the niche, so she knows the niches in the market around that guy. I don't know anything about the entrepreneurship of hoteliers. Now I learned a lot. And of course, my concern is the programming. Because while we ourselves invest the money in the programs by the curator, so we have to earn the money, and because that it is a foundation, we reinvest it into things. We reinvested in the building itself to make the building better, because we did it with a low budget, and we reinvested in the program. So in the software and in the hardware, we reinvest. But only when we make a profit, we can reinvest that profit. That's the model. And if the model doesn't work, so if tomorrow there is a crash in the touristic world, then we have a problem.
And is there some way to...
No, but okay, but if you only, I'm thinking about that risk, you do nothing, so this is, yeah, we have to do this, I think.
You have to succeed.
Yes, till now we think we succeed, yes.
Can you tell us some secrets about programming? Because this is a lot of what we are thinking about also in the summer school, how to program plays. And again, what are the risks? I mean, what if you propose a dance studio and there are no dancers in your community?
Yeah, no, but if there is not a need of dance studios, don't make something where, so listen to the community, but not only in the neighborhood, but listen also on the level of the whole city.
How do you do that?
Well, by connections, and also by connecting, because of the Breeding Place Bureau, they have a lot of data, they have a lot of information, and it is, well, they can offer you the information. So data is in that way, or connections is in that way, is very important. But like in the northern Lviv situation, we heard a lot of things people need. But needs doesn't say that it is economically feasible. So you have to know, and entrepreneurs, they know really how there is a demand, and you can and to make money. Not big money. I'm not talking about, this is not big money. Eh? This is really something, well, with low budgets you can do a lot. So it depends also in the investments. When I look, for instance, to Pololon building, and I really want a high level of investment in the building, yeah, then I never can build for the creative industry, then I never can build for students. But I know for sure that students, there is a demand here in this city for students to live in studios. I think there is also a demand in this city for the creative sector. But then you have low prices, and they don't need an environment where everything is comfortable. They make it themselves, I'm sure. So that's thinking about programming. Yeah, I think that's very important.
So should we open the floor to...
Of course. Thank you both for this nice lecture and this nice conversation. And maybe you know about story with social affair at the neighbors, у сусідів. Two young people decided to organize this cafe in the depressed district near city center, but neighbors was against this idea, this cafe, And you told me a few days ago that Lviv is a city of paradoxes, that Lviv is open to the world, but closed to itself. So how do you see, and you being a knowing Lviv, the place with big potential, with big social potential, art potential, etc., but nothing is going on there. So what is the way to solve this closed to itself city? Thank you.
Well, this is a really big question, but okay. Number one, I think, is information. If you have no, like you said, they start an initiative next to neighbors, but the neighbors don't know what they're starting. The first thing what they do is, Jesus, what is going on? So the first thing is communicate what you are planning to do, and perhaps they have suggestions for it where you can incorporate. And when you incorporate it, they don't protest. Perhaps they protest, but so if you don't inform the people, if you don't communicate with the people, then you create a problem for yourself. So I think that's on a bigger scale, on the scale of the Lviv, it's in a way the same. If the people are, some people don't want to be informed. Okay, that's something on one hand. But the most of the people want to be informed. Like in the Pololo case, I think that the people only see things that the things are demolished, but they are not well informed. What are the plans? What is their possibility to influence the plans? What is it? So then you create a distance between perhaps a very good initiative, but perhaps not. So information and communication, I think that's the start of everything what you do. And that's not on the scale of your neighbor, that's the scale on this neighborhood question, and that's on the scale of the city as a whole, I think.
Thank you. Nadia?
Well, I think as planners we need to accept that not every neighborhood needs to be happening. You know, some neighborhoods can be quiet and just be places for families, and not every neighborhood has to have a very vibrant street life. That being said, if there are neighborhoods that do want more diversity and attract new residents and have more happening, I think actually information is a starting point. As somebody who has either bought a house or has privatized a house, you need to understand your rights. And if, for example, you want to start using space in front of your house for whatever, pop-up store, or to just start a barbecue and invite your neighbors, or maybe build a small addition, you need to understand what you can and cannot do. You kind of need to have a sense of ownership and rights to the space in your environment. This is very important, just knowing what is possible. Because, for example, I'm now looking to buy an apartment, and I would really like to have a backyard, and have a backyard that I can use. And I kind of find out, can I do that or can I not do that? Because the laws are too complicated. If you have something that's simple, straightforward, what you can and cannot do, you may be able to do more. And the second point is, I think this issue of information is kind of the most important issue, because the Netherlands, having lived there for 5 years, I know is a heaven for data. I mean, you have data on practically everything, demographic data, all sorts of preference data. Yeah, anything you want. I think this is important, and it's also important having community organizers. In the US, that is a separate profession. It's actually people who are professionally trained to talk to other people, and that's what they do all day long. And it's important. I mean, sometimes this can be a hobby, sometimes it's a profession, but the more discourse there is between different communities and the administration, the more you can build trust between people and the administration, different communities within the city, between each other, the more you can eventually do. I think that's, you know, that's kind of the key to it all. And it does happen. I think it can happen, and I think that there is I think there is cultural predisposition for that. It's just a matter of time when it happens.
Thank you. Ми попросимо звукорежисера Надін мікрофон, будь ласка, той, котрий без чохла, підняти вище, тому що її трошки погано чути. І я не бачу ваші руки, як казала Ірина Білик. Ваші питання? Так, є ваше питання.
I have two questions, but first I just want to clear out about the WOW project. As I understood, WOW project was a city project, not an independent initiative, or I'm wrong?
No, it was a mixed project. It is not a city project. The city had a problem. And they looked for initiators who can solve for a way their problem also. So it is an initiative, you have the initiators who want something, and the city is the owners of the building, so they had a problem, and that was a kind of how you can cooperate in a way to solve the problem.
So the city asked the initiatives to that building?
The what?
The city asked the initiatives
yes,
to come to that building?
Yeah, exactly. They asked before developers for the same building. But because of the crisis, it was not feasible, economical feasible. Some wanted to demolish it and to build, but obviously there is no need. You can hardly make housing along the ring road that you have to invest. So at that time, there was no interest of the market, so they had a big problem. So they invited, in that way, initiators. What can we do with this place that is, in a way, in our policy, but also that has enough space for your own initiative? That was what it is about.
Okay, so it was my question. The city decided to do something with that building. Now the initiatives came and told the city, we want to do something here. The city initiated to do something. Okay, and the other question is really important for, I think, for our city. So you mentioned about the empty buildings and about the exhibition and Venice Biennale with all these empty buildings. What was the exact mechanism of the city? What the city did or offered to the initiatives or others? What did change around?
Yes. All those other buildings, what I mentioned, they are not the property of the city. Only the building I mentioned in my own. That's the owner of the city. All the other buildings have different owners. So, but the owners, like the city was also the owner, the owner had a problem. So if you have a problem, you must see what kind of initiatives there are that fit in what can be in that situation. So there was a housing corporation that was owner of the office building, and they built the student houses for it. There was another, that was a private building, and because students, there is a market for student houses in Amsterdam. So it is also a market question, and if there is a market, then you can make in that, or convert or renovate office space into student housing. And there was also a big, you can say from city side, but more from policy city. For instance, our mayor said, well, if the owners don't fill up the buildings, why don't, it was forbidden to say, but he did say, why don't the squatters take the building? And that is against law. But he wanted to press, in a way, also the owners to do at least something. You can leave that empty. So there is also, in political way, there is a kind of force to the owners to do something.
So this was the question.
Yes.
Okay.
Дякуємо. Я хочу нагадати. Can you turn on your earphones, please?
Oh.
Thank you. Я хочу нагадати, що питання можна ставити українською мовою, тому що у нас працює перекладач, і наші сьогоднішні лектори Надя Ніліна та Кейс Ван Райвен почують переклад. Відповідно, не кремпуйтеся, я сподіваюся, у вас є цікаві питання, тим паче я бачу тут молодих успішних архітекторів та урбаністів, але не бачу їхніх рук. Поки ви наважуєтеся, я також нагадаю, що у суботу у нас відбудеться представлення пропозицій, які готували учасники міжнародної архітектурної школи Львів, яка триває у центрі міської історії. Відтак, в 19-й годині запрошуємо до нас до конференц-зали, вхід вільний, головний архітектор Львова Юліан Черкінський.
Kees, can we return to budget question? How much the maintenance of this campus cost?
At this moment?
Yeah.
Well, when I tell you it in euro, it costs about 8,000 euro a year, the maintenance.
What is the area of this campus? How many square meters it has?
It's 8,300 square meters. But we invested, of course, in the building, in the renovation. So, well, there is in the beginning there are low costs for maintenance of the building. But perhaps I can give you another data. The investment of the building, so the renovation, what we did and the breeding places did, not the maintenance. That costed about 250 euro per square meter, the investment per square meter. And that is really, really low in our world. At least it costs 600, 700, the renovation per square meter.
And the green connection, who paid that?
We did. We invested 50,000 euro in the surroundings, but it is also private. That is our own place, our own gardens. And with the city, I went into discussion about refurnish the square. So there were old banks that didn't work, and they renovated it. So the public space, that is the responsibility of the city. And the inner courtyard, that is our own investment.
Питання таке.
It's for green, yeah.
Моє питання таке, хто був основним інвестором по інвестуванню в цей проєкт? Чи це були приватні інвестори? Ну, я знаю, що ви отримали додатковий грант, але основне навантаження по фінансуванню хто поніс? Це приватна компанія чи група приватних інвесторів? Хто ці люди?
Yeah. The foundation is the investor. So I'm director of that foundation. There are two directors. I'm one of the directors. And we invested 2.1 million euros in the renovation. There was a loan from a bank, 1.5 million. There was 300,000, more than 300,000 euro. There was an investment fund, a kind of social investment fund, who invested it. And there was a loan, a short-term loan we had to pay in 2 years. And so we are paying it now back. So that's the investment from the foundation itself. The subsidy was around 700,000. So when you compare the subsidy with our own investment, we take the risk of the investment, the foundation. Yeah, is it clear?
Thank you. And Ірина Склокіна, Центр міської історії.
I would like to ask, As far as I got it, the situation was a little bit more complicated. So it's not only about one building, of course, it's about the whole area and surrounding. And you mentioned the problem of safety there. So the problem of this place, like considered to be not so safe for the common people. So were there any other actions on the side of the city to change the situation in general in other terms, not only about buildings, but in wider sense?
Yeah. Well, of course, in the whole neighborhood there is a mix of other activities. This is one of the, well, this is a strategic intervention of a bigger scale. But there is, of course, in the housing, that the housing corporation has to renovate houses. That's an action. And when they renovate houses, it is 100% social housing. So now in the renovation, they try to introduce 30% of the housing for private houses and 70% is left to social housing. So they also want to change in a way the diversity of the population. And there are also smart other urban garden movements who have a plot what is empty for 5 years, and they have their own community in gardening with the community. So there is a lot of, that's what I say, we have a connection with 10 other local organizations, and sometimes we provide room for them to do something in our place. And sometimes, well, we go there to tell something. So this is a kind of, in the neighborhood, a kind of exchange of activities, of possibilities we offer and they offer. That's going on. Yes?
And may I also ask about the artists? So their audiences, do they make any exhibitions in your place?
Yeah.
And how do they attract the people from the city center? Because of course the most interested, like museums and exhibitions, everything is in the center. So how do you attract people to your area?
Yeah. They do it in different ways. So there live 50 artists, and there live a lot of musicians from the conservatoria who were graduated from the conservatoria, and they made a class with children from the neighborhood, and they organized a kind of little concert. Well, this is an example. There are also designers in the fashion world, and they organized what you saw, a fashion, but on 2 levels, a professional level, but also with children. So they have a class with courses that children can make their own thing, and that they are. And the funny thing is also that in the Moroccan society there is a lot of traditional. The women are, they are in their houses, they are knitting, or and we try, or the artists try to get them out their houses, but it's also a problem with husbands and so on. And to get them out of their houses and to interact with the fashion activities. So this is, and food is always a very good connection. So they make special food, and when you have a meal, well, with the special Moroccan food thing, you make everybody happy. So there are on different levels. I can give you one example what also they won a prize. There are artists that are in this building. They invented a project because there are refugees in Amsterdam, and the refugees, they have to get back to their country. When they have proceeded, and when they have no rights any longer, they have to get back. That's a big problem in our cities. And the artist invented in our place an embassy for refugees. And mind you, refugees never have an embassy, because the country where they go back to, well, they are not welcome. They are not welcome in our country. So they invented their own embassy of people who are not welcome anywhere. To take attention to this kind of problem, and they won a prize with an idea about how we can, as artists, make this kind of problem to a bigger audience, to a bigger problem, more to get information about this kind of issues. And so that's not only on the neighborhood scale, but that is also on the city or even on the national scale problem. And that can artists do.
Thank you. And останнє питання я поставлю українською мовою, тому що те просте я міг сказати вам, поставити вам англійською, а тут, знаєте, політичний зворот передбачається. Відповідно, дуже прошу вдягнути навушники. На різних лекціях у межах Днів модернізму у Ратуші ми чули про різні стилі і думання про архітектуру, про містобудування. Вчора Юлія Богданова розповідала нам про те, що спочатку Львів будувався таким дуже просторовим, квартири були великі, кімнати були невиправдано великими. Далі з'явився модернізм, який зробив усе це якимсь ближчим до людини, itself, до звичайної людини. І оскільки ви обоє, Кейс працював там в Нікарагуа, в Надії досвід роботи в Москві, в Амстердамі. Оскільки ви обоє займаєтеся містобудуванням, то, напевно, сьогодні останнім питанням буде таке дуже філософське, але, як на мене, дуже важливе сьогодні для Львова. А хто або що є головним у містобудуванні? Ladies first.
Well, it depends on where you sit, but there are many ways of solving problems. And for example, you can identify the least protected species and design your city for that species. So that can be a fish or a bird, for example, or it can be a person of challenged mobility, or it can be a child or an elderly person. And if you design your city for them, everybody else is going to be pretty happy as well. So you take just the least protected, the most fragile resident of the city and work for that.
Thank you. Kees.
I'm thinking on two levels. In City Hall, you're talking of the city. I think we have a different system, political system, than you have. In your system, the mayor is very important. And the mayor is, in our system, not elected directly, like it is here. So he has a less political function and more a kind of, like the president has to join. But next to the mayor, there are the deputies, you can say. And if there is a deputy, a dedicated deputy mayor, for instance about urban planning, for that was always my political boss, you can say, in my public view. And they can have incredible influence on what is going on, within, of course, the policy of the council, of the city council. But that's one person, and I know in my career, two of those persons who were really, well, had really influence in that. And that's one level, that's the political level. And then there is, I think, the level of the civil servants. Also, when you have professional but also dedicated civil servants, there are always people on that level who really are, well, the eyes and the ears of the city, the government. Then I'm talking about the government part of it, not about the inhabitants. I'm talking about the really city hall people. And that, I think, that combination of civil servants who are really dedicated to the public, not to the political, but to the public case of the city, in connection to some of the politicians who are in charge. That is the combination what I think is the most powerful what they can do for the city.
Дякуємо. Кейс Ван Райвен та Надя Ніліна сьогодні на днях